This is Brent. I'm here. I'm going to try to make my way there, but I'm still feeding my kids dinner.
Are you gonna bring us snacks?
Yeah.
Not for you.
Oh, yeah, I don't blame you.
Still working through those pistachios.
And you said Dave's not gonna be here tonight?
No, he's not.
He told me he was gonna call in. Is that not the case anymore?
Oh, I don't know. He might still.
That's what he told me. That was last week when he told me that, but, so.
We can hope so. That would be nice.
I might need someone to send me the agenda that has does it have the link on it?
Oh, the link, here.
I need the link.
If you go to the city website.
Oh, yeah, I can do it that way, okay.
Bottom right, there's the meetings button. Bottom left, excuse me.
There's our text meeting.
I'm gonna add you to the attendees, thank you.
Join Zoom link. All right, now. What time is it? Oh, it is 5:31. We are gonna call this meeting to order. And we are gonna start with approval of our prior minutes.
Which were from April 15th, and I have them open here. I sent them out that night, I think.
You did.
Anybody have anything that they wanted to change or alter?
Or forever hold your peace.
We're all critically looking at them. What was that, 2 months ago?
I don't remember saying that. All right. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Hi.
All right, thank you. Update, back to meeting. Update on resort tax expenditures. I'm going to share my screen. You might have to let me show, let's see.
You
let
have
me
to make
show
him a
my-
co-host first after he joins.
Okay.
I've joined.
You joined?
Try the, yep, there you go, you got it.
There you go. No.
All right, let's see if I can make this so we can actually see it. That helpful? I do have all the details on the expenditures as well from Lonnie, and I can bring those up, but just kind of in a big overview, we spent about $1.2 million so far this year, and we have about 1.47 in collections elections. My assumption is we still have a few more, expenditures for the pool coming in since we're in
Pool,
June, that
And the parks, special, whatever projects.
Yep,
Parks,
okay.
85, will be some more coming out of that. And then we're gonna roll the 523 for the back truck forward, because that won't be here till August.
Yep. Does anybody want more details on expenditures? Probably Mike could ask those questions.
I do have one question on the
Sure.
parks.
What's that?
The parks, went up to 203,000.
I don't know, I don't understand that number,
All right, well,
that'd be the total budget.
Let me go here to this for a second, and I will bring up,
I can kind of summarize in parks, generally speaking, like on the general budget, we're pretty good. We ran a little bit over in some line items, not significantly, just, mainly because Willie's been busier, so he's buying more stuff and burning more fuel and blah, blah, blah. The project budget, I've been trying to parse that out, all the different projects, and some of those are just coming through now. Yeah, that's probably one I want to look at.
sorry, I'm just seeing if I can
I'll let you mess with that.
get
It takes me a while to orient myself here. I think we're at, we go over to, the main one for like the resort tax would be that 85,000 line. And I'm not exactly sure where we're there. I don't know that we're gonna get it all spent this year, but I'm trying.
Well, I don't, one just comment, don't feel like you have to spend things in a
No,
budget year, it
I-
doesn't matter, because
I just
we
feel
we can roll it over, it's
Yeah,
a pretty
but I
easy
also
thing for us
want
to do.
You know, like, if something like the pickleball courts, and we dug that out, we did a lot of labor, but we had to repave it. That paving is coming out of that, the park project money, just trying to get some of that money out where people can see it, it's not buried in the ground, it's, you know. The other thing that's still gonna come out of there is we got the final design for the Pride Park improvements and a budget together, and we have to pay off the architect for that one, so that'll come out of that account. We just helped out the Frisbee people with new baskets with that account, so.
Okay.
Just trying to, in baseball, trying to keep it, so,
All the parks rolling.
trying to keep all the parks with a little, give them a shot once in a while.
Yep, that's great.
I like that.
Since I got the detail up here, I'll just go through this quickly. And then, here's,
Is there another column to the right? There is.
yeah, so
Column we want to
there's
see.
the current appropriation. So the original and current are probably the same, so,
We want to.
this first the committed month is not important to us, so the second column, now, I'm gonna just zoom in a little more. The second column is what's spent, and then the column to the right is original appropriation.
Yeah.
So, we've spent about 212,000 in public works so far.
Yeah.
And then you can see that jetter truck lease is on the very bottom for 523, and we've said we'll have to carry that over till next year.
We did order it the day after the budget got approved. It just takes that long.
Who do you get that from?
Joe Johnson Equipment, they're the factor dealer.
Okay. And then swimming pool, a little hard because it's, goes between pages there. So we're, as you can see, under budget on salaries, which is good, but those will come up a little bit, but probably not to the 92, so. It's great if they're tightening up on salaries a little bit. It's great if they're tightening up on salaries a little bit.
On the pool.
Yeah,
I think we have less employees this year.
yeah.
We're closed a day a week, right?
What's that?
We're closed on Mondays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have enough lifeguards.
Can't find enough lifeguards.
Yeah.
I feel your
That
pain.
Monday closure is just a short-term thing,
I was
right,
gonna
Mike?
I don't know, I guess, well, I'd like to see how public feedback is on it. It's nice to have one day idle to just catch up on everything at the pool and, you know, just not have 7 days a week.
Yeah.
If the public will allow it, I like it.
Okay.
And Monday's not a bad day to not have a pool open, so.
That helps you to balance chemicals too, doesn't it? If you have a day where you don't have people in it. Then this is the debt service you can see in the middle there. So 98,000, so that's been paid already. And then we've done the transfers, 150 to sewer and 100 to water. Any other questions or comments there? Since I've got it here, I'll just bring up this other one. And this is the revenue. This is a little more simple. But 1.47 in resort tax revenue, which is up about $100,000 over last year, I believe. We can pop back to that other sheet and it'll show us.
Can I clarify that, so we can put it in the notes? So we have 1.4 million in revenues so far? or
1.47 in received year-to-date so far.
Year-to-date?
Yeah. Now,
Okay.
one of the things I'll just mention, because it can become confusing, if you try to balance all the different reports, they don't always balance. Because remember, the resort tax that we receive in July, which gets booked to this, shows in the other reports as resort tax that was collected in April, May, and June. So it can be a little confusing if you try to balance all the different reports, but this is actual collections in this fiscal year. Does that make sense,
And then
everybody?
we're 100,000 over last year.
I believe so. We can go to the other report.
And I have a dumb question, but remind me, we run on a calendar fiscal year?
No,
or is it
it's
September?
July 1st
Oh,
to
it's
June
right,
30th.
first.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's
it's even
a-
different than how the federal
It is,
government
it's
runs their fiscal
and
year.
all governments in Montana are on that,
Okay.
on that, fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions there? I'll bring up that other thing that will compare us here, and, yeah, 1,372 last year and 1,470 this year. So that's a, you know, off the top of my head, it's an 8% increase over last year. We still may get a little bit in collections in the end of the month, but probably not more than a few dollars, I would guess. It really would just be people who are delinquent paying in. And then on this graph, I'm just going to show this graph because I do include the stormwater in this because it's collected. It's not part of, you know, we don't really engage in stormwater, the stormwater stuff. That all goes to Mike, and, you know, we don't really have input on it because I guess we have input overall on the expenditure, but it's committed to that stormwater. But it does show in this graph, that's why it shows at 30.1%, is because it's, you know, that's where the reason it should be right. It should be 25%. So I'll have to look at why that's calculated slightly off. But is that and then so we have sewer. So if you look at, we're still spending about half of the resort tax that's collected of the total 4%. About half of it goes into water, sewer, or storm sewer. So that's, you know, in terms of when someone buys something and they pay resort tax, about half of what that money goes to is water and sewer and storm sewer. Does that make sense, everybody? Which is actually a big reduction over what it was before this last thing, because you know, that was where a majority of it went to.
Tom, do you have that number without the stormwater in off the top of your head, or can you get to it easily?
How much we collected without stormwater?
No, meaning of the 4%, water, sewer, storm is half, but 1% is stormwater. So how much of it, if you take stormwater out of it and you just do water, sewer, how much of that of the 3 is it?
20,
20%?
approximately.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, approximately 20%.
18, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, so this goes all the way from 2020, just so you know, so it's why it's, some of the numbers are a little off.
I'm with you though. That's good that we've gotten out of that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, questions or comments? Questions or comments from the public?
So, I just had a quick question.
Sure.
You have the dump truck and a mini loader, on
Oh,
your
yeah,
list.
kind of a wish list thing, yeah.
Okay, we haven't got the budget yet.
Oh,
We're-
I'm
we're
sorry, I thought we were talking about that.
No, we're still on.
I'll hold my question.
Yeah,
then.
okay, we're still on, update of expenditures and revenue.
Okay.
Hearing no more comments, now we'll talk about budget.
Okay.
Okay, so, we'll start with just the basis for the budget that we kind of built this last year. And, so I'll just kind of go through process with you, and then we'll talk about detail on it, okay? So what this shows is that using last year's collections as the base for next year's revenue, okay? So we have a little bit of fudge in there, we're at 1.4 instead of 1.47. So that includes revenue from resort tax, interest, and pool fees, okay? And then we operate on, this is a cash-based budget, just so everybody understands. We're not using accrual accounting, we're using cash-based accounting for this. So we're adding back in what our end-of-year cash balance is. So I've got 1.35 in here. We have, I think, 1.47 is what Lonnie told me we had left. 1.455 is the actual cash balance, but some of that's still going to be spent this year, right? So this is an estimate. We won't know until we get there. So that gives us about 2.7 in total available funds. All right, I want you to focus on that number, but I'll mention the next number. There's $600,000 in contingency budget funds, right? So that's if the pizza company has an incredible year and all of a sudden spends, sells 10 times the pizza that they ever thought that they sold before, and now we have $600,000 in extra revenue. That still allows us to put that in the budget. So that's what that is. But we're only budgeting to spend that $600,000 kind of in below the line of this future collections reserve, okay? So just want to keep that in mind. We're budgeting for $600 in extra income, and we're budgeting to expend it, but it happens in kind of two separate below the line things. Questions
And-
on that? Does that happen
Well,
every
just
year?
a significant. I was just going to say
Well,
the comment of it's really important that we do that, because if we don't and sales go up, then we end up giving it all back rather than being able to utilize it.
That's correct. And to answer your question, yes, we do that every year.
Is that a fixed number?
The 600?
Yeah.
We came up with it last year, and it's just a sit there fixed number.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a best guess.
So in the case of a catastrophe of some sort, there would be extra money?
No, this is the opposite. We'll get to the catastrophe money, but the general, this is in case we had a banner year, not if we had a catastrophic year. The catastrophic thing I will bring up at the end, but I'll just mention here quickly since you asked, that's this cash reserve at year end. And that cash reserve at year end assumes that we spend 100% of the money, which never happens. So there's also some flexibility in there that if we can punt on the fly too. Say we have something like a flood, and which is not going to happen, and we have lower business as a result of that. The city can can reduce expenditures as well. So
that's an additional 600,000?
No, the 600 is that reserve. The 300 you see right above it is we're budgeting to have 300 in the piggy bank at the end of the fiscal year.
And if I may, that 600,000 is, for example, I don't know how many years ago it was, but say we budgeted to collect $100,000 and we collected 110. We didn't have anything planned for that 10,000, so we had to give it back, as tax relief. And so that 600,000 is just sort of a buffer to protect,
From that.
yeah.
Correct. So what we
Right.
always do is say, we'll pay off the pool early if we happen to end up with $500,000 that we didn't know we were gonna get.
Yeah, we'd rather use it than give it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so any more questions or comments there? All right, so coming into our categories, I'm just gonna make this a little smaller so you can see that. These are generally accepted ones with one exception, which is the fire protection. We'll talk about that at the end. But there is some slight increases in here, and because I'm a rounding guy, I rounded some of this stuff. We had some things that like ended in 523, and I just rounded them. Because our budgeting is not that exact. So the tax relief represents 5.2% of the thing. We give 5% back in tax relief. I actually just budgeted a little higher, assuming that we might have some extra collections, so it's just part of that budget. But if we do have extra collections, we have room for extra tax relief, and that's 600. So does that make sense? But so that number is realistic. We used to just budget 100 for that, but I've actually set it in the spreadsheet to be 5.2% of the collections we anticipate. Admin and PERS is, that is the $13,000 we do for the STR software, as well as some transfers to the public employee retirement system that happens as a result of this. Water and sewer, we have talked about a lot. I know there is a move to get the support for water and sewer off of the resort tax dime, but it's still there, and I will let the public works director and the mayor decide on that kind of thing. Right now, it is budgeted.
I would just say that on both those, a couple things, that money that goes in there gets leveraged very well.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I would think really hard about not doing the water and sewer money, because we're able to have the ability to go pre-engineer projects and have design, we're able to step in and get grants that other people can't. Like even on our water project now, you know, having the ability to get into these, we're leveraging money from grants, and especially on the sewer side, you know, we look pretty good on water, we look pretty good on sewer in terms of capacity. In 5 to 10 years, I may not be saying that. We need to start looking at, we need to start looking at 10 years down the road, we might be spending $20 million on sewer. And so I'd keep those funds.
You know, and I would say, just for everyone's benefit, when we built the kind of base budget and we were doing this renewal, we said we would leave those at 100 and 150, and they would reduce as a percentage of our total resort tax if we left them at 100 and 150. Anybody questions on that, comments? All right, pool principal and interest, it's about 98,000, 100,000. Streets operation and maintenance, that's just a little bit of increase, I believe, at 230. The pool operation and maintenance it was set at 155 last year, 150 this year. You know, again, we can fudge these numbers a little bit one way or we have to. You know, there is some budget we have to on them. Parks operation and maintenance, that has been pretty consistent, and the parks project, just in a request, moved from 80 to 100, so up by about $20,000 to just put a little bit more into parks projects so we can accomplish a little bit more there. And then I'll let you talk about some detailed stuff on that. Law enforcement, I have not gotten a specific number for it. I think this should be adequate. I know they would like to purchase 2 new vehicles, according to the mayor, so we put that in at $100,000. questions on that? Dave, you have a comment on that? You gotten anything more detailed from them? All right. I'm
Sorry,
gonna-
looking for my
go-
mute button. I do have more detail, but I do not have it in front of me right now.
Okay,
Historically, when, in the first year that Red Lodge received a resort tax, was there a set of guidelines that determined what those categories are up there on the screen, lines
uh,
12 through,
yeah,
and how have they been determined, I guess, is the question.
So they've been determined two ways, and, I'm happy to go into lots of detail with you if you want, outside of the meeting, just because there's a long history to it. But there's two things that determine it. One is the ordinance. So that's it. The first is the law. So the voters voted on it, and when they voted on it, they specified certain things that it could be spent on. And so we are limited to those things that were listed in that when the voters voted to approve the resort tax. Then the ordinance expands on and contracts that as long as it meets the law, right? Like it just gives more detail. So there's an ordinance that the city passes that gives more detail to that, and it can restrict it more. It can't really expand it more, right? But it can give more detail to it. So that's where that list essentially comes from. Originally, we couldn't spend it on things like, we could buy a snowplow for it, but we couldn't pay the snowplow driver. We could rebuild the park at Capitol, but we couldn't mow the lawn. So when we went back in 2020, we got approval to spend some money on operations and maintenance in the pool, in parks, and in public works. So, and we fund the pool operation above income, and we fund one person in, that does.
It's half parks, half streets.
Yeah, half streets and half parks, basically, yep.
So to make changes to any of those requires something on the ballot, is that correct?
That is correct.
And was that the set of, ballot initiatives that were just currently on the ballot this
2020.
2020 was the
Yep.
last time?
And just to clarify, the ratios don't have to go to the ballot, but to have a new category has to go to the voters.
Right. And
Well, unless it fits into one of these categories.
so is that established every 5 years, or is that a just?
25. Well, it has 20, I think,
Is it 25? I don't know.
25?
I just figured I wouldn't care.
I think
I think it's
we're
20.
20, but we can do it sooner.
You can do it sooner, you just can't do it longer. Although I heard that Big Sky did it like till 67 or something, I thought. They said.
So,
Yeah.
Big Sky's different,
Yes.
they're special.
Yeah.
so in order to get different categories on there, we have to wait till 25 years is up?
No, we can get different categories currently, but you have to go to a vote.
Good.
And I'm happy to talk more about this stuff with you, but I don't want to, there's
Yeah.
lots of detail that's easy to give you offline to answer any of your questions if you want to.
Okay.
And if we have time afterwards, we can do that. I just don't want to get too far into that.
Dave, I have the police budget. Has it changed from what I have?
No, so if you've got that, do you see the amount for cars on that?
Yes, so I'll just.
There was cars and rifles that were in that category, I believe.
Plus a shop heater for 8,000, but they were asking for over 200.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So,
That's panels. Please pick up. Oh, no, you've got other stuff in here.
That's just for the resort tax, so there's, they were asking for, to put 50,000 aside for, a future police facility. They were asking for, that's only 2,500, but they were asking 125,000 for machinery and
Okay.
equipment, plus an $8,000 heater on top of that, and then, computers and body cams of 16,500. So their total ask was 194,000 plus 8,000, so they're a little over 200,000 that they're asking.
Okay.
specifically out of resort tax?
Yes, that's resort tax, so it's not the general fund capacity they have.
Yeah, it's very bold.
Yeah. What's that?
What was the total amount?
202,000.
Two and change.
Yeah, 203.
Well, and the answer is our general budget is very, very restricted on how it grows. And so pretty much everything other than paying for people, if we can figure out how to get that out of resort tax, that's sometimes an easier bucket to manipulate.
Yeah.
But it's the city's responsibility to provide for the well-being of its citizens, and if we didn't have the resort tax, how would they pay for those things?
More taxes.
I mean, I think if we're focused on that topic for a minute, I mean, we've had this discussion before. I know it's not our role as a resort tax committee, but I will say publicly as a resort tax committee member that I believe the city needs to look at a public safety mill levy. That is the city's responsibility, the council and the mayor's responsibility. I understand it may not be supported the first time. I understand it's a controversial topic. But so long as I'm on this committee, I will advocate for not giving the police department more money. Because as a citizen of this community, I don't believe we shouldn't give the police what they need, but I believe the city should be giving the police what they need from a public safety mill levy, not from the general fund and not from the resort tax. And so long as I'm here, I'll keep saying that.
I will reiterate that I agree with Brent.
I agree.
Third.
Do you have an agreement or disagreement?
Oh, yeah, we've talked about this, but yeah, I mean, I'm all in favor of a public safety levy, but.
Yeah, I think it is significant. So, you know, Brent, maybe it's just a motion to recommend to the council that, maybe we have to think about how we want to word this, but, I think it might be worthwhile to have a formal recommendation to the council that we don't believe that can be funded consistently through, because it's going to come in when we talk about fire protection. This is going to be a driving thing too, which is the same piece, which is that they recommend that resort tax can not continue to absorb increases in public safety, and that if they need increases in public safety, they need to consider a public safety bill or something like that. If you have better wording or something.
No, I mean, that's fine wording. And obviously, we're just an advisory body, and so the council can always choose to do what they want with the resort tax, but as a member that is volunteering to be here, like council members and mayors, I guess I just want to make my opinion clear that we as a community need to take public safety seriously, as we do, but funding it through the resort tax and the general fund is likely not the correct way moving forward, in my opinion.
Well, there's all kinds of categories from the general fund that would similarly be excluded, in my opinion. Like, the resort tax specifically is for specific things, like a resort town.
And one of our challenges is that, you know, we haven't redone the survey, we've talked about it, but that law enforcement was low on the totem pole in terms of what the community wanted it to be spent on.
And I just wanted to make it clear that this has nothing to do with my lack of support for the police or public safety. I support police and public safety. We have to come to a point where we recognize that we don't have sufficient revenue to do all the things we need, whether it be a new sewer system in 20 years because we're a growing community. At some point in time, we have to bite the bullet on public safety and educate the public on the importance of this financial tool to help us fund our public safety.
So, Jody, do you feel like you want a motion for that, or do you feel confident in the agreement of the board to bring that to the council?
Dave, I mean, I guess it would just be a recommendation. I mean, if you want to put a dollar limit on it or what?
I don't-
If you want to keep it at the 100,000 or?
I think different topic for a second. The question, I think what the Resort Tax Committee is recommending is that solving the law enforcement problems is not going to happen through resort tax, and they believe that, it was unanimously believed that the council needs to address the costs of public safety and law enforcement through asking the public for a public safety mill that can be tailored to the level of law enforcement that the community wants and desires, as opposed to trying to continually take it from resort tax.
Okay.
And
No, I
we
see.
can do that, but at the same time, the voters have already said, yes, please use resort tax for capital expenditures related to emergency and public safety so that our taxes don't go up. So we can go have that conversation, but for the current time frame, we already have what the input from the voters is.
Would, so
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave, but I'm not sure I entirely agree with your characterization of what the voters said. I think the voters do support it, but it's on a lower level. So we don't have a super clear understanding of exactly what the voters meant when they said law enforcement was a lower priority, right? And so I think I would say that I just don't know that I agree with what you just stated.
Well, and that's fair and understood as well. But I'm also looking at the conversation that's going to lead into having some of those conversations and the need to spend money now.
Right, well, I appreciate that, and, but I just don't want that to get lumped in 100% belief that we exactly know what the public wants, because frankly, I don't think we've asked them in terms of public safety mills. And I don't think we've taken the effort to educate them, like we have on resort tax and other things. And so, if this year we need to spend 200,000, I'm also not opposed to this year saying we could spend 200,000 if that's what law enforcement needs and we have the budget within this resort tax. But I just still want to see the council and the mayor take some leadership on this position. And I've not seen it in the paper. I don't come to your meetings, but I'm not aware of it occurring in terms of a discussion in the open about funding our police through a public safety mill.
It was discussed in the public safety, committee. It has not probably been brought forward to the whole council, because everything goes to the committee level first. And, I haven't been on that committee this last year, but I know we did discuss it in like the prior year. And at that time, there wasn't much, I guess, support for it at that time. But that doesn't mean that there isn't now, things change.
And I will say to your point about like, even if we have the budget this year to cover it, it kind of just keeps kicking that can down the road. And I feel like we need to if we're gonna make the city council do a movement on this, we've gotta stop kind of filling that gap. Sorry.
I'm just listening to you guys, and it just sounds like what you're trying to say to the council is, this is, public safety out of resort tax is sustainable. We've been trying to do it, but down the road, it's not gonna keep running.
And it will come into some of this conversation that we've got to bring up next, which I think is important. And I've got to see if I've got a different document here that I want to.
Yes, we've had the same conversation out of the general fund, which Tom is probably about ready to. We've been paying for the fire contracts completely out of general fund, and that's not sustainable either. So, I do agree something has to change. We only have so much money, especially in the general fund, so.
And I think right now in the general fund, when you look at, depending on how you look at what general fund revenue is, I think you're about like 20% fire and 50, I don't want to say that wrong and get the wrong numbers, but like 50 or 60% police out of the general fund. I do have the numbers, but it may just take me a little while to find them, personally.
Do you want the rest of the budget?
So I guess, point.
Yeah, you could tell me out of the budget, yeah.
Are we tonight being asked though to amend this budget spreadsheet you have to their request? Is that our role tonight, is to consider that specific request in light of the draft budget you have presented, or is that going to be at a later meeting?
No, I think that is tonight, so, and maybe before we get into that, so that's what the request is, but now let's hear from,
There's fire, there's police.
yeah, so, out of the total, so
You're a
Police
third
is-
of what the police is.
Yeah, fire is a third of what the police is, so, but of the total general fund, where's the total general fund budget? What's
It's
the bottom
most
line?
of it between fire and police.
Yeah, it is.
Total general
Public
fund
works gets little,
is
water and
there.
sewer.
Yeah, so you're 2.3 million out of, total general fund budget, and 1.3 of that's fire.
And that's a little of a misnomer, because what you really have to do is look at the property tax value, because all of that's the stuff where, and to Tom's point, that's overwhelmingly, like probably 90% police/fire.
It's used up, I mean, our property taxes,
Goes to police and fire.
yeah,
Yep.
90% of it, what we collect from property taxes
Right.
goes to public safety.
Right, and so we've got a lot of other things that do the best
Are
they
you
can.
gonna bring
like
that
parks
budget back
and-
up?
Yep, I am gonna bring
Well,
it back
there
up.
are things like, there are fees and services which covers water and sewer, and you can make the argument, and to Brent's point, I don't want to rehash a conversation we've had, because there is the whole cake versus frosting discussion here philosophically, but you could very easily make an argument that to an extent, we are subsidizing our water and sewer rates by the fact that we are using some resort tax to them. But at the same time, nobody's clamoring on the door saying, please raise my water and sewer rates.
Well, you could also say you're subsidizing, the general fund by moving certain things to water and sewer that could be covered or should be covered by the general fund, like council fees and administrative fees and some of those.
Well, yeah, so there are staff that are dealing with those resources that are from there. And to me, the real problem is, if you just keep tapping into the resort tax, the problem is if we spend $150,000 of resort tax to pay the capital portion of our fire or of our police, that money's not available for everything else. So it's not allowed to get additional parks or equipment. So that's where the real trade-off is. But I do not believe, and this is fine. This is a philosophy, and again, what I believe isn't ultimately what matters, but I'm not inclined to say that resort tax is strictly frosting. I think that it very much is what makes our town have better property tax rates than maybe some other towns in Montana. But again, nobody's knocking on my door saying, hey, my property taxes are too low.
At the same time, like, the city has a responsibility to provide some basics that we would have regardless of being a resort town. And so just for perspective, Red Lodge has like 85 mills we're collecting now, which only goes down every time our property values increase. Joliet 143 and Bridger 235, so.
Compare
We
that
are the-
to
we are the
West
lowest-
Yellowstone.
Sure, well, yes, Yellowstone made the decision to specifically, basically run on resort tax. Are we West Yellowstone? I don't think so.
The other issue when you compare to West Yellowstone is the majority of West Yellowstone is commercial infrastructure. So they don't have a residential component anywhere close to what we have in Red Lodge. Most of their property tax value is hotels and, it's hotels, the majority, so they have a lot of property tax value held up in commercial infrastructure. Red Lodge has a much better balance to that.
So yeah, there's a conversation to be had still at the community level at wide, but to Tom's point, that's not necessarily the function of this meeting.
Well, but yeah, so I do think it's a good point, and I think part of the point is that, we are the lowest in Carbon County. We're significantly lower than Laurel, we're significantly lower than Billings, and so while we do have property taxes, there's a balance. You have to have a balance.
Well, there's an opportunity cost to having those low
Yeah.
property taxes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. All right, well, we're gonna move on here because we're gonna run out of time. And so I just want to keep going through this, and then I'm gonna actually come back to the fire protection piece. So capital projects, there's been some that I've identified, and then Mike actually has some more. So the ones we talked about and identified last time were street signs at $40,000.
Yeah, and that one, I believe, and the mayor can probably correct me here, but I'm not sure if we changed that project to a much simpler one, and we'll probably have it done by the end of this month, and it's gonna be quite a bit less than 40. We'll use, probably 15 this year out of this year's budget, and then
What do you think you need for next year?
0 for street signs.
Okay, that That
We'll
helps.
release that and put it back.
Yeah, okay. Ice rink improvements, you know, we've identified this as a, you know, kind of the next pool project, the next big community piece. We have that in at $400,000. That's going and leveraging the tourism grant money, as well to try and get that project pushed and done. Questions on there? Main Street sidewalk repair at $80,000.
And we spent, I think around half of that, and that project was mainly getting the equipment to do the work. I think, you know, moving forward, it could be, I think there's a lot of flexibility in that. I mean, we could probably run on $5,000 a year for just the maintenance of the equipment, and just keep rolling with it. We could take, say, 20 or 30 grand more and put it in there and create like a downtown sidewalk share fund, whereas a business owner wants to come in and do the sidewalk, we'll pay half out of that fund, and then once it's gone, first come, first serve. We did that in another town I worked.
So if we, I think it's a great idea. So we drop it just to keep things moving at $50,000, is that,
Yeah.
I think sidewalks are important to folks, correct? That's what we talked about last time.
And then, if it was 50, I would say the majority of that would be put into a fund that
Yeah.
hopefully we could leverage into 80.
I would say if you think you need money for, the maintaining some of your equipment, I would go up to your, streets O&M and add an extra $5,000 into that.
Okay. And that works, and then
Cause
the sidewalk.
this lower one should be the capital project and the upper one should be the operations and maintenance. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I would just, you know, if the direction downtown sidewalks wanna go is into that share program, then that kinda needs to be thought out and see how much you
Yeah.
wanna put into it. But if we added 5 into the O&M, then that Main Street sidewalk repair basically becomes that fund. That's
Yeah,
a separate fund.
So, and we, you know, we can get more meat on some of these potatoes as we go through, but gives us something to shoot for, right? And then EDA sidewalks, where are we on that? Are we still needing some match monies there?
Well, I'm finalizing, I got the last draft of drawings last week. Currently, the EDA budget is pretty tight with what we got for the grant, and what we set aside for our match. We're currently running with no sidewalks in the project at all. We're running, it's only about a 4% contingency at this point, so it's tight. I think I'm gonna put in mandatory with the project to tie in from zip trip to the school as part of that, to get a sidewalk to the school. Even where we don't do sidewalk on the corners where we're gonna have the laydowns for the ADA ramps, I wanna put those in so that there is a starting point for a sidewalk. And then in the project, we're gonna figure out how many feet of sidewalk it is, come up with an estimate, and then a possible way to pay for it would be just like, what do they call it, the little,
SID?
a text for the.
An SID,
SID,
yeah,
yes.
special improvement district.
And see what that looks like. I think we're gonna be at, long story short, I think we're gonna be at, to get those minimum sidewalks in, I think we're gonna be at somewhere around 175, maybe north of that. I'll know more by the end of the week,
So you-
hopefully.
Can you use, is there anything
But
in
I think we can use some
stormwater? Yeah, 'cause that stormwater was stormwater, streets, and sidewalks.
Yeah, it was, and, because this project is following a major storm project, and it's designed to put in the curb and gutter that directs stormwater to the inlets, I think that that's a legitimate, expense for that 1% stormwater. I think, I wanna just say this in regards to sidewalks, and I wrote something up on it, but in terms of that 1%, I mean, I think in this case, it's a good application to use on sidewalks. Moving forward, I have a hierarchy at where Public Works feels that 1% could have spent.
Yeah.
And it's still getting the stormwater out of sewer, because we
Yeah.
still have a lot,
Okay,
so.
which is what the goal of that is.
Yeah, so when I went through there, it was like, you know, pipes in the ground, curb and gutter, some blah, 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 sidewalks are in the bottom of that.
Yeah, okay.
But I think in this case, it's applicable, and I think that if we're able to do 100, I think it's gonna end up being 200 grand. So Storm would do 100, and this would be
I put it up, back up to 150, which is what I think it was last year.
And I'll have a solid number hopefully by the end of the week.
Is anybody opposed to that being at 150? Do you want to try and put it at 200 or?
Yeah, we have the money in Storm to budget for,
Okay.
out of the 1% for 100.
I think we have always said that sidewalks are an important part of resort tax, and we want to make sure that we are allocating money towards sidewalks. So I think that's been a lot of our discussions we've had in the past, and so we want to make sure we're holding up on that. And then the vacuum truck at 523, and then what else do you have on your list that you would like to present to us?
I think, the one thing, and I used some of that Parks Project money to get a design for redoing the planters and the slab at Pride Park with something that's more durable, hopefully very nice looking with textured, concrete and stones, and that budget came in about 82,000 to do that work. I'm gonna try to, there are a few grant opportunities out there, but I would say that would be something for resort tax to consider. That's a focal part of the town, and, it would be a great opportunity to have resort tax dollars not buried in the ground.
82,000?
What's that?
Did you say 82,000?
82-ish.
What was that for again? I'm sorry. I'm trying to-
For Pride Park, up
For Pride Park.
Park, okay.
I think that I threw in some equipment, I think that Lonnie's got it in the budget. That was mainly, the one was, an additional piece of equipment just in the event. There's been some talk about annexation of, Remington Ranch, and that would be about almost a 20% increase in the amount of street we plow. So we would need a piece of equipment for that.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi, Brandon.
And,
Thanks, Fred.
I think I put that in there. Right now, I think we could do that without more labor, but we're not gonna know until we do it one winter, but,
Hopefully get a light snow winter.
When is is that imminent, the
I don't
Remington
know.
Ranch?
It keeps rattling around, so I just thought
I
I'd be prepared.
I can add a little bit if you'd like, Tom.
Go ahead.
Or this, so Chris, the legislation passed, we keep talking about how the legislature has capped us at no matter what property taxes do, we get 1/2 the rate of inflation over the last 3 years is the city budget increase. This year, they changed it to 4%, goes in effect at the end of the year. But in exchange for that, we only get 40% of new builds rather than 100%. So I have a
Only in
request
the
out to the,
millage.
go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, but
Only in the millage calculation, though.
So, yeah, so what we don't know and what we're looking at is, does that mean that we only get 40% of the benefit if we wait until years beyond this year to annex those areas that are developed? And we have a question out on those, so.
what does the snowplow cost?
Well, what I the way we kind of strategize it is, we have two loaders with the directional plows on them. And one of them currently runs the alleys here in town and does some other stuff, and one of them works in the golf course. I get, and we're kind of swapping equipment around. But like a smaller size loader that would then do the alleys, and I'd probably do a better job at them. And then one of the big loaders would actually go up to
Okay.
the annexed area. So pretty cost effective. I mean,
So it's not a
new
plow, but a
truck's
loader?
$500,000.
Like,
And one of these mid-sized loaders is under $2. So,
So I'm gonna put,
I like plowing alleys.
yeah, well, we'll still plow them, we're just gonna use a little smaller plow,
Yeah,
that big one's tight.
it's hard, sometimes you wanna have the right equipment for the right job, right? But this is not for this year's budget, so I'm just gonna memo it in there at 300,000, so. Anything else, Mike?
No, I think, no, the Pride Park thing was one, and I kind of feel like if decisions, if it juggling things, like go back to that EDA sidewalks, I think $100,000 out of resort tax is good there, because we can pull from the 1% for the other 100, and if that makes it easier to help with Pride Park, then I suggest that scenario.
I have to apologize, I was answering a text from my daughter, could you repeat that last statement?
So going back to the EDA sidewalks, you
Yeah.
were talking about bumping it to 150.
Yeah,
I think the 100 is good, and then we get the other 100 out of the 1% storm, and then, if that makes doing Pride Park easier with having that extra 50 not going to sidewalks, I think
helps.
that's a good scenario.
but I'm just gonna make a memo in again
The
for.
Pride Park would be this coming year budget.
If I can get, it would be in this coming year's budget, and if we could pull it together, we would try and do it this late summer, fall, during the lull before weather hits.
All right,
That's all I got.
questions for Mike from anybody?
Keep up the good work.
All right, so now I'm gonna come back to the fire protection thing.
Are you guys done with me?
We are done with you. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. We do appreciate it.
No, thanking you. What you were doing.
We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
And for the record, we are very lucky to have him.
Yeah, he works so hard.
And
is-
he's very capable.
He
He's
is
very capable.
Yeah. And he can communicate.
And he can communicate, and he can tell me how to work Zoom, so it's not like most public works directors can do. So.
He was a good hire.
All right, fire protection. So in here, we have fire protection in, and what this does, so obviously I have, multiple, perspectives on this, so I think I don't need to disclose anything that might, be a potential conflict of interest. I have no personal gain from this, I think, which is very important, but obviously I'm the fire chief, and so, I represent both sides of this coin, so I think it's important. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't understand that in the room, but in case you don't, that is the full disclosure. So, this is a conversation between the mayor and, myself. It is going back, both Jody and Chris will know, probably 2 or 3 years. And currently, the city spends, 28 mils on fire protection. That was an agreement that was done in 2014, and that is a fixed mill amount. The agreement is on mills. So as property values go up and mill rates go down, that as a percentage of the total budget increases. As we explained earlier, we spend about twice as much on police protection as we do on fire protection, which is not typical. Typically, most cities, their police protection will be close. Some fire protection is more than police, and some police is more than fire. In small communities, sometimes there's actually not police protection and there is fire protection. But so that's just a comparison piece. What did we say? It was actually three times the amount
Right.
on police protection as we do on fire protection, which is a significant difference in allocation, even as we've increased the fire protection.
And it is based heavily
The-
on the fact that our police is based on a full-time force and our fire is very heavily based on a volunteer force, although it does also have staff positions.
That's correct, and I don't know that that matters. Most of the cost in fire protection, the big cost in fire protection actually end up being capital, as opposed to operational for us, but I don't know that I would disagree with it. I know the mayor believes that that's a difference. I don't believe it is. I don't think the fact that we are more efficient in fire with our value because we leverage our money more because we don't pay our firefighters. I would argue doesn't justify that personally. I think being economically efficient doesn't bode well with saying we should spend less money on it or allocate less resources to it. But I will concede that is only my opinion.
Unless you're also arguing for a volunteer police department.
That's correct, which I'm not arguing for.
Yeah, well, and we've been told by the chief that, they can't have volunteer police officers
Which is good.
anymore. Yeah, they all have to go to the police academy.
Oh, my God.
I'm not, and to be clear, to be 100% clear. Yeah. To be,
All these donors sold it, no.
To be 100% clear, I am not in any way advocating for reducing our law enforcement budget. I am a favor of a public safety mill levy to help with law enforcement and to fund it more. I do not believe we should cut our law enforcement. I think we have to dive in and adequately fund our police department, and we have to commit to that as a community. That is my opinion. But I do not believe we should sacrifice fire protection because we don't want to sacrifice law enforcement. So those two budgets should be more closely matched, which means we are underfunding fire protection significantly. That would be my statement there.
Can I ask a question about the
Yeah.
law enforcement?
Yeah.
Did we budget, or did we spend 100,000 this year? or-
No, we didn't. We sent about 50.
Okay, so this is
This is a significant increase.
That's 400%.
Yes, it's a
Thank you.
significant increase in the allocation.
But I don't think they got any new vehicles last year.
They did not.
They did not, and that's why it was lower, because we knew that they would be replacing 2 vehicles a year, so you had broken it out yearly last year.
Yeah, and I think our thought was that it would be lower every other year when they were not getting vehicles, and that they would get vehicles once that year, and then, we might suggest that as a strategy, maybe we level this. I would suggest this as a strategy, we level it, and they can divide it between vehicles one year and other stuff the next year, and then have a level amount would be one
We were
suggestion.
expecting a higher budget this year because they didn't get any vehicles
Yes.
last year.
Yeah. So we were expecting to move from 50 to 100, not to 250.
202.
Now,
Sure.
part of that, like, if you do look at that, is $50,000 that they want to put into a reserve account, because they do eventually want to have some type of, what they call it, a law enforcement center. And I don't know, Dave, do you know, was that $50,000 just for the reserve, or was it to actually start, like, planning type of thing?
There may be like some engineering and some plans, but there's a couple of other conversations that Tom and I are gonna have, that are kind of related, that we haven't started there yet. But yeah, that's money. The logic behind that is the same as at your house. We're gonna need a new car in 5 years. We better start putting some money aside now.
For clarification, though, you were talking about fire, so can we go back to fire?
Yes, we can go back to fire. We keep getting stuck. I do have another meeting at 7 too, so I'm gonna have to.
You're on the rabbit hole with it.
Is that, hold on, remember I said I was not paying attention because I was sending a text, and I have to send a text because I'm supposed to see my daughter at 30, sure.
Can I throw in a quick question?
Yeah.
So this is fire protection that comes out of the resort tax,
Yeah.
how much money comes out of regular
Oh,
city budget
okay.
for fire protection?
Yeah, so I'll get into that. So currently, we spend about $320,000 in general fund money on fire protection, okay? We spend nothing on, we have spent no money, in the last 5 years, and overall, pretty much no money on fire protection out of resort tax. Resort tax has not typically paid for fire protection. It is eligible, but since the fire department moved to a contract in 2014, we stopped spending resort tax money on fire protection. Originally, we were spending about $50,000 a year, between $50,000 and $60,000 a year, but we stopped doing that in 2014.
Are all these
And it
things
should be
starting to-
noticed, this is not a done deal and a given. This is a conversation piece that we are still discussing and working.
So the proposal that Dave and I are talking about is to spend, what this is in at, is 13% of the resort tax on fire protection. This would be part of the contract, so then this money would get transferred to Rural Fire District 7, which is the legal entity that provides fire protection, and put into a segregated account that could only be spent on capital improvements. Those capital improvements would be reported back to the city on a yearly basis. In exchange for that, we would reduce the amount of general fund money that gets put into, that is spent, to about $220,000. And that would be pegged to a percentage, about 20% of the general fund revenues. So it would no longer go up by the mills, which is not a great, not what the city would like, I think would be the best way to say it. And it would be, as if city tax dollars more comes in, the amount will go up. If it goes down, it will go down. So we would be a percentage of that income.
So the new contract would remove that, millage-based thing?
That's correct. It would remove the millage-based thing, and it would replace it with a statement that says something like, can still being, 20% of the general fund revenue, and how general fund revenue is calculated would need to be determined, and 13% of the resort tax. Now, for the fire district.
Wait, what? Can I interject for a second just to explain something? This all came about because we had, increase in tax revenue. And so that mill amount jumped from, we had expected to pay, and these numbers are gonna be completely wrong. We had expected to pay the fire department $200,000. Well, because that percentage went up, that 28 mills, they got $300,000.
Instead of being 28 out of 100, it was 28 out of 85.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Bigger
this
change.
is gonna like set and.
But just
But that's happening.
from the piece, our costs actually have gone up more than that amount over time, and so, you know, and to be 100% truthful, the fire department budget is seriously struggling, and we are cutting potentially a total of 3 of our career positions over we cut one, 4 months ago. John Trapp worked for us. We are not filling his position. Tim Ryan is retiring in October. We are not filling his position. And I have another position that is grant funded that, unless we can get the grant renewed, we are going to struggle to continue. So it's a significant reduction that we are seeing in what we're allocating towards career staff. So I think it's really important to take this into context, because we are very successful in our fire department. We provide excellent protection, but there, I think, maybe is a misperception that we have more resources than we can utilize, and $300,000 to provide fire protection to a community like Red Lodge is not tenable at all. $1 million to provide about what you're paying for police, about $900,000 a year, is probably more accurate in what it would cost to provide less service than what is being provided now. And so I think that's really, really important to understand, because affects tax rates, it affects what, not affects, it affects insurance rates, and it affects protection and the services that are provided. And so, I don't want there to be a misunderstanding that this money isn't needed in fire protection without this. And even with this deal, it's gonna cause us some problems because we are getting into a little bit with what the city deals with. If this money goes into capital, right, we can't use it for operations, which means I can't use the money that we're losing. I can't use that $100,000 to fill a position. Now, fire protection is very capital intensive, right? To be able to, a fire truck, a single fire truck new right now costs $1 million. One fire truck. In order to provide protection to the city, we have to have 3 fire trucks. Okay? If you run those at 30-year things under today's dollars, so you're running 30-year-old fire trucks, right? So you're getting one new every 10 years. That's $1 million every 10 years, just in fire trucks. So just a perspective on what the cost value there is. And that's none of the equipment on them, it's not cost to store them, it's not cost to operate them, it's not cost to staff them, that's just the cost to say. So this agreement would err towards capital, but it would reduce us in operational money, which we can manage and we can make this work. But that's the proposal for the agreement.
And I'll just add that we are having these discussions. For those who are listening in, Tom and I have spirited discussions, but we're still on the same page and we're not fighting. We have the same customer base we're trying to take care of.
Yeah, I mean, I did say this to the mayor, is that, you can say my focus is on fire protection because I'm the fire chief, but I'm also the chair of the resort tax, I'm also a taxpayer, I'm also a community member. My benefit is what I believe is best for the community, not just what I believe is best for the fire department. And so everybody knows where my perspective comes from, but that's
So Tommy, you said 20% of the general fund. Do you mean the whole general fund, or do you just mean the property taxes collected?
property taxes. It's not just property.
There's a big difference.
There is a big difference than that, yes, because you have carryovers and it also would be a look back, so it would be 20% of, we'd have to talk about exactly what that calculates is, but it's property tax, it's entitlement, it's resort tax transfer, because all those things go together, right? Like the resort tax transfer reduces property taxes, so that has to be included. And there may be another line in there that needs to be
And then
included.
you were saying 13%.
13% of the resort tax, yeah.
And you would base that off of the resort tax collected last year?
The previous year. So both would be based off the previous year's collection, because otherwise it becomes really difficult. So we'd lose a year anytime there's a jump. It would take a full year to get that jump, but it becomes impossible to wait to know exactly what you collect. Otherwise, you're basing it off of estimated collections, which I don't think is probably right either.
So if you base that off of last year, what would be the amount that the city would be paying the fire department total?
220 for out of general fund, so
Okay.
give you about an extra 110 over what you would anticipate space, and then 182 in resort tax. Yes.
So
it is an increase, but you have to have the increase, otherwise it doesn't make any sense to do it, because we're losing operational funds, and so you have to leverage the capital funds.
is the 13%
What's in
the
there right now?
resort tax?
Yeah, that's 182 right now.
Okay, and then what is the general fund? Is that a percentage?
20% of general fund tax and tax associated revenue would be good.
Okay, so
Tax
20%.
revenue, property tax entitlement.
Does
Resort-
the city have specific plans on what it's spending that difference on?
You might have to look at this over.
I have to look at the
Yeah.
data.
Got it right.
What was the question again, Jeremy?
What is that?
So you're saving 110 or whatever out of the general fund, does the city have specific plans on what it wants to spend that on? Or is it just?
So we are not done yet. We have done the rough amount of budget. Now that budget includes an additional officer for a school resource officer. That won't happen unless we also get some additional funding sources in that. But right now we're over budget. So, and Tom, correct me if I categorize this wrong. Basically, what we'll do is we'll up what we're paying for fire by 60 grand. But with that, we also get the ability to pay a portion of that out of resort tax rather than all out of general.
But you're paying less for fire out of general, correct?
We're paying less for fire out of general, but more overall for fire.
But still less than the full 28 if you,
Yes, yes.
gotcha.
Are there any numbers that show how tourism, which I assume most of these categories are parsed through through the lens of increased tourism, creating a larger burden on the city tax base? And does fire protection have good data that shows that because we have more tourism and that type of thing, that it costs us more to protect the community from tourist-caused fires? You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, so, you know, if you go back to the base justification of the resort tax, it's that tourist communities have higher levels of expenses to provide services to tourism, and they try to shift that. That comes in a couple of different ways. Obviously, it's direct provision of services, right? But if you have more people flushing toilets, more people drinking water, you know, more people, you know, interacting with law enforcement, more people calling ambulances, more people getting in car accidents, you know, more people starting fires. It's just a numbers game, right? The more people you have, if you were, and you can see that, I mean, I can tell you our calls in the summer are 3 times what our calls are in an off season. And we can, this is anecdotal, right? But
Yeah.
we can tell you, you can trace where our tourism business is, and if you trace our fire and EMS calls, they will trace the same, they'll basically trace the same pattern.
It's the same with, I mean, all of our public safety, whether it's the police or the fire or, you know, ambulance. I mean, it's all the same.
And it comes down to, you know, having parks and recreation or trails or roads plowed, right? Like, you know, you're also trying to leverage it, right? So you're trying to not only do things that benefit the tourists who are helping to pay resort tax, but recognizing the locals pay the resort tax too. And so you're trying to do things that benefit local population. So part of what we are doing is offsetting, part of the resort tax idea is to offset property taxes too. You can offset it by actually doing a direct rebate in property taxes, but you can also offset property taxes by not having, this is what the mayor would say, by not having to pay for a police car, by not having to pay for a fire truck, or not having to pay for a snow plow. I know that helps offset the property tax by mowing the park with resort tax money as opposed to general fund money, or having to do a park there. So that's kind of the basis for it. So, just because I do have a hard stop, I have another meeting at 7, this is the way my life is, so I know some of you guys maybe need to get going too. We try to do it. So right now, Mr. Mayor, we have, and committee, we have not added the $100,000 in for law enforcement, so we have it at 100. We are left in this budget with a cash reserve at year end of $284,000. We probably could, you had asked us to leave a cash reserve of $300,000, and so I can fix that by correcting our income to what it actually was this past year. That balances the budget, except we have 341. So we have not added the extra for law enforcement. If we were to add $40,000 more for law enforcement, which give them 140, which would be an increase, we would have a balanced budget.
So for police, you're saying 140?
Mm-hmm. That's my proposal. Please, committee members, disagree or make a comment of whether you want to do that or not do that.
I think that's more reasonable
Yeah.
than 202 or whatever.
I'm fine doing that, knowing that, you know, they may not have that next year.
Yep.
But because of the budget.
I'm fine doing that too, but I do think the city council needs to do something for public safety, because we can't just keep coming back to this well, because what, if we have a bad tourism year, then how are we gonna pay these things?
I agree.
Philosophically, I think we should be able to pay our own police, whether we're a resort town or not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And our fire.
And our fire,
Yeah.
right.
I
All
mean,
the
Bridget
things.
doesn't have a resort tax.
Yep.
I have a police department.
All right.
So we're gonna put that up to 140.
Yep, that's correct. Any other questions or comments here? We're not gonna get through our agenda.
No, we can move to next.
Do you wanna give a quick update on the state meeting?
Yeah, it was a great meeting. It was interesting to see, actually. Now, I'll make this statement after we just had our conversation, is that, when looking at the other resort tax, they spend a lot of money on fire protection, a little bit of money in, am I wrong?
I didn't say anything.
They didn't actually talk about spending money on police protection, I'm sure. No, actually, Big Sky doesn't, because they don't have a police force at all. I'm sure West Yellowstone does. I felt like the resort tax committee group was coming together. I think we'll have a better outlook for the future. And I think they understood some of our concerns about, that we expressed last time about having the resort tax meeting and saying they had no legislative agendas, and then having this miraculous legislative agenda show up, after the legislative session started. So they're definitely interested in that. They've adjusted the dues slightly, which takes a little bit of the burden off of Big Sky, which wasn't particularly happy with, but felt like we weren't gonna win that argument. But it was a good meeting, it was a good group, and I think it was very helpful. We're starting to see a lot more resort tax districts. So they passed one in the area outside of West Yellowstone, just for fire protection primarily. And they're passing one in Whitefish at Big Mountain, again, primarily for fire protection.
We had it in Red Lodge, so,
And it was in Red Lodge, so.
yeah,
That's great.
I wish I could have gone, but I was out of town.
And then 5-year review of the resort tax ordinance, Mr. Mayor, last meeting, we said we were good to go with it and you were gonna move it forward. Where are we on that?
Let me find my mute button. Have I seen that we were done with it, or I'll defer to Jody? I was thinking we don't have it yet.
Here's what it says in the minutes from last time.
Definitely.
It is ready to go to the city attorney and mayor. It is posted to the shared Google Drive. And then how to deal with the 30, 60, 90-day fine should be a city council and staff decision, not a resort tax committee one. That's what we said at the last meeting.
Okay, I wasn't at the
Yeah.
last meeting, so that's,
Yeah, I think we decided we were done with it.
okay.
Joy said she wasn't gonna work on it anymore at all, because we decided we had beaten that dead horse as much as an advisory committee can, so,
Perfect. So it's in the Google Drive?
yeah.
Hey, we'll get it on for discussion in this next batch.
But
Okay.
I saw it on the agenda, I was like, what's going on?
Yeah. I don't blame you.
All right.
Can you will you email me that budget?
Yeah, it's shared. I shared it, and I shared the reminder link to it for everybody, so you would have it.
So I'll bring it to admin.
I'm pushing us here. Public discussion?
I have one item.
Sure.
I promise I'll keep it to 3 minutes. I'm Carol Garvey, I live in Red Lodge. Excuse me, I always lose my voice in this room. I want to talk about penalties. I just paid $750, not willingly. So I brought it to the council, I appealed the discussion. It was partly our fault, we thought we had no income, didn't know we had to file. And then we were notified 30 days later that we hadn't filed. By that time, the fees had built up. So,
Can I shorten your conversation just quickly? We have discussed this a lot, and I'll tell you what we have transmitted which is we think that there should be better systems in place, and that this updated ordinance should include better systems so people are not surprised that they're late, and that there should be some sort of initial grace period so that they get notified before finding out they have big fines.
that's one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing is I brought the appeal to the council. I was denied because we had been late a couple of times, and some of it was a learning curve, some of it was a family issue, but bottom line, to finish it up, as they denied the appeal, it was suggested possibly that there could be, not 750, not 0, but something in between. And the discussion took place in the council with the mayor. And it was thought that that was not possible from the legality point of view. So I went to the city attorney and I had a meeting with him and Danae. And he said that is not true. It could have been adjusted. So bottom line, I paid my $750. I hope it helps patch up.
Actually, it doesn't go to the resort tax, it goes to the city.
After that meeting, it was brought up that they are two separate penalties, so it could have been split, and I'm sorry that the council was not aware of that at the time, because, later, we, because there's a number one penalty for over 30 days is $250, and then if you're over 60, it's an additional $500. So one or both of those could have been waived, and I'm sorry that the council was not aware of that.
But it can be refunded if it was incorrect.
I don't know, that would be, Dave would have to.
Anyway, the bottom line is I thought it needed to be brought forward that neither the council or the mayor knew that it could be adjusted, but the city attorney just said absolutely it could be. So I'm only here to say this is my experience. Obviously not happy. My taxes, my resort tax, and I only have a couple of them that they will be paid on time.
Yeah. We appreciate, we had heard about your situation and we have discussed it a lot. And that's part of the recommendation is that ultimately the council has to decide on that fine and fee schedule. But our recommendation is that we want people to make sure they know, our real recommendation was to make sure people are well aware that they might be late before they get fined, so that, we think the fines are reasonable if someone is refusing to pay. We don't think they're reasonable for somebody who has a small amount, who wasn't aware they had something, but we don't know what the legalities of that are, and so we did pump that to the council.
I'm here to say I paid $48 in taxes and $750 in penalties.
Which doesn't seem right.
It does not seem, that did not seem right to all of us.
It did not seem right.
But we
I know.
didn't,
Jody
but we
voted
don't,
for my
but we,
tax.
we absolutely heard that. We don't think that's right, but we also, we're just an advisory board to the council.
Right, can it be remedied?
We think the council should remedy it, and we have said that, and like I said, just so you know, you haven't been at those other meetings, but we discussed it a lot. And we agree with that piece, is that it needs to be reasonable, but it also can't, where our side part was, we didn't want it to sacrifice having a fine for somebody who, say, owes $50,000 in resort tax and doesn't pay. And so that, the city and the attorney need to work that out to get the ordinance written correctly.
My tax
Penalty should not be
$48.75.
It should not be bigger than your tax bill.
Yes,
I didn't think.
Thank you for sitting
Yes.
through this whole
yes,
meeting.
thank you very much. Yeah, we do appreciate it.
I would be glad to bring it back to another meeting.
You can always raise your hand and just say, can I talk so I can go?
Okay,
I'm glad you stayed though.
Birthday.
Oh, all right, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Nice to
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No,
All right.
that's nothing that I can't learn on the side.
Yeah, but you have,
I'm just trying to educate myself
Yeah.
on this.
We like people, people educate themselves, end up on the committee eventually, so.
So, Chris, do you have everybody's names?
Yep.
Here for the minutes, okay?
Yep.
Perfect.
All good, I think I've got them ready, I'll just review them and send them out if you
All right.
can look especially at this one.
I can absolutely look at it, and
Meeting
have
adjourned?
2 minutes to go pick up pizza for a meeting I forgot I was supposed to get food for, and sit there.
Where are you gonna get pizza?
My only copy.
See you later. Bye, Joyce.
Enjoy.
And I have a question for you when you come.
Okay, let me just quit recording here.
What is my little